Hello and welcome to Rewind. I'm Kamal Santamaria. Here on Rewind, we're opening up the Al Jazeera archive to bring you some of the most powerful documentaries of the past decade and news of how the story has moved on since. In that last decade, India, once thought of as a country of more than 1 billion people living in poverty, has seen its economy boom and has emerged as a new force in global manufacturing. But that's not the whole story. According to the International Labour Organization, more than 150 million children are victims of child labour around the world, and India has long been among the worst offenders. But over the last few years, things have been changing, in no small part thanks to the work of one man, Kailash Satyarthi. We met him first over a decade ago as he led a march around the country against child trafficking. From 2007, here is Lawrence Lee's powerful film, Children for Sale.
NAIPUR MAITI was 12 years old when she was sold by her own parents. She was sent to work as a domestic help in Kolkata.
Before it started, I never understood what would happen. We thought that here in the village, I wouldn't get food or clothes. And I thought if I went to the city, I would get a better life. That they would do this to us is beyond our imagination.
NAIPUR hoped it would lead to a better life and provide a vital income for her family.
They used to get me by the hair, bash my head against the wall and put my hair in the fan. They had walking sticks and they used to beat me with them. The two sons who went to school used to taunt me and tell me, if you wanted to study, why did you leave your family?
NAIPUR's story is just one of millions, a story of disappointment and betrayal. In India, children have few rights. It is illegal for them to work under the age of 14. But poverty is such that often children are put to work as soon as they are physically able. It is a question of necessity. Anulberia is a small village with a painful past. All of these girls are victims of trafficking. Trafficking consented to by their parents and not resisted by their community. Children are sold mostly as a result of ignorance. Many parents have never left the villages of their birth, and to them the cities are places of great wealth and opportunity. The traffickers lure parents with the false promise of a better future, an education, a chance to earn money. There is a small payment and the child is entrusted into their care. Arjun was a child trafficker. He has bought and sold children for his own profit. He has acted as a middleman, preying on poor families and persuading them to hand over their children and then passing them on to brokers in the cities. He's a known figure in this community as he's responsible for taking several girls away from the village.
I was a cycle mechanic in the village. A man from Delhi came to my house. I asked if he could get me a job in Delhi. I was in debt and needed money. I had a debt of 16,000 rupees. So I went to Delhi and he told me, why don't you supply me with girls from your village and you can take the commission from the families. I used to get 200 rupees for each girl I sold.
200 rupees is less than $5. In contrast, a buffalo here can fetch up to $350. But Arjun knows that this money is a life source to the desperately poor villagers he targeted. As we pressed him for more details, he became uncomfortable talking about his past.
I'm feeling faint. You're asking me difficult questions. Let me sit down. I don't like what you're asking me. It's all in the past. I was poor. I don't want to talk about it now.
Arjun says he now realizes that trafficking is wrong and has decided to fight the problem rather than be a part of it. He and many of the parents are now on the same anti-trafficking committee, victims and perpetrators working to try to stop the cruel practice happening in their village. But for many, the damage has already been done. MANJU and her friends were trafficked by ARJUN. sent to live with strange families hundreds of miles away, where many of them suffered terrible physical abuse. Manju's mother said she had no choice but to send her daughter away.
When she was growing up, I never thought she would live with someone she didn't know. But I have a boy who's disabled. We have to spend such a lot on him, and he's constantly suffering. It destroyed my entire family. We got into so much debt. I didn't know how to bring up 3 children like this. How could I educate 2 normal kids? I thought I would educate the normal boy. He would go to school, and the girl would go to work in the city.
Manju, like most children, was sold out of a mixture of ignorance and necessity. The stories brought home by her and her friends have helped to raise awareness, but they're haunted by their experiences. Manju's relationship with her mother has suffered.
When I went to the city and saw other fortunate children who went to school and had a good life, I used to wonder, what if I would go to school with them? What if I had a life of my own? If I could study as well and maybe in the future get a job? I think my parents were poor. They didn't have the money to feed me, and that's why they sent me. I think it was my mother's fault. I've been very angry with my mother, but she told me, "You've seen our conditions, we couldn't feed you. What could we do?"
This little village may have been able to fight back successfully against the traffickers, but truly it's the exception. Charities estimate, for example, that in Calcutta, some 50,000 people work as domestic servants. In Delhi, that figure's 80,000, and across India, charities say, some 11.5 million people work for a pittance in somebody else's house. Some 70% of them are children. Child trafficking is the 3rd largest illicit trade in the world. In the West, trafficking carries connotations of the clandestine, illegal smuggling of people across international borders. But in India, the practice is more open. There are more than 10 million child workers, and there is no anti-trafficking law. India's children are ripe for exploitation. But some are beginning to fight back. At this demonstration, thousands of children have turned out to lend their voice to the anti-trafficking cause.
This is very important because we have been fighting against child slavery, child bonded labor, child labor for quite some time, more than 2.5 decades. But we have realized that 30% of India's 10 million children who are in bondage are the victims of trafficking in one way or other. And this is a large number, it's a very, very big number.
Leading the way is 10-year-old Devli. Her parents were trafficked to work in stone quarries. They were never able to repay the debt imposed on them by their owners. Devli was brought up in slavery.
The owner of the quarry used to come and keep goading me. Keep working, keep working. You have to work here, your dad has to work here. If someone had a fever and went to sleep, they got dragged out of bed and beaten up and dragged back to work. The owner used to say, "Who will work, your dad?" If someone got ill, there were no medicines. We didn't get any clothes either. We were given 2 kilos of flour every 2nd or 3rd day, and we had to mix it with water and drink it. That was our food. The owner burned my hand. One day I had a fever and I went back to the slum and was lying down there. This man came up with a burning piece of wood and put it on my hand.
More than 100 of these children are former trafficking victims rescued by the charity Bachpan Bacho Andalan, the movement to protect childhood. Kailash Satyarthi, the organisation's founder, has dedicated his life to the fight against child trafficking for labour.
Oh, it's a great day. It's overwhelming, it's exciting. And I'm sure that this is the biggest social mobilization in the world against the menace of child trafficking, and child trafficking particularly for forced labor. Once the people start feeling that buying and selling of children is a crime, It's a crime against the entire humanity. It's not just illegal, it's not a matter of law. It's a matter of ethics, it's a matter of morals, it's a matter of humanity. And we are challenging those very, conscience of the people.
Changing mindset is the first hurdle in the fight against trafficking. These children share a common past. They've been confined to slavery, denied a childhood or an education. For the next month, they'll travel 5,000 kilometers, spreading their message across northern India and into Nepal, warning other children of the dangers of trafficking. In each place they visit, the locals look on bewildered, but the message seems to be getting through.
Kids are being taken to different countries and different places, girls especially. That's what the protest is trying to say. Most probably they attract kids with money and promise a good life.
As the convoy makes its way northward through some of the poorest regions of India, it's easy to see why parents are willing to believe the promises of the traffickers. Although much of the trafficking occurs within the country, children are routinely taken across India's borders. For the traffickers, it's a remarkably easy journey. For many of the boys and girls in their care, it's just the beginning of the nightmare. By now, the marchers have reached the border with Nepal. While there are some checkpoints, vast swathes of the area remain unmanned. Cross-border smuggling is rampant. So here we are in no man's land. That's the main crossing point between India and Nepal, just a couple of hundred yards away here. Over on this side of the road, behind me here, well, this is Nepal, with the mountains there in the background. This road you can see stretching all the way down here, well, that's also the border, and as you can see, there's absolutely nobody there to guard it. And if you come to this side of the road, behind us here, well, that's India. Now, clearly, with the slightest level of sophistication, you could move anything you wanted to across the border without being stopped. Weapons, drugs, and of course, the most precious commodity of all, people. At the checkpoint, the scale of the police's task is evident. There's a steady stream of traffic. The buses are crowded. It's impossible to detect a trafficked child in the tangle of bodies. In even the smallest Nepali village, people are preoccupied with finding work abroad for their children. The area near the village of Bhairawa is a hotbed of Maoist activity. In recent years, there have been riots, bombings and executions. Durgavati's husband was a Maoist who was killed by the police. She's been left a widow with 3 young children to bring up, and her face is a picture of bitterness. She's desperate to get her children out of the country.
I just want them to go away from here. Here, there's nothing, no money. Everything is finished for us. The government here gives us nothing. There's no help from anyone to take care of my family. I don't know how it works or who goes where or how. How do I know anything about the outside world? I hear they all go to Saudi or Malaysia. I don't know how they go there. I've never stepped outside this village. I just want to do something which will make my kids and my family live a better life.
WAKIL is the village's local success story. He's done well for himself and has clearly made some money. He has a job in the Gulf working in a gold market and says he can find jobs for the children of the village.
We can help these people because when they are grown up enough, they can send them out to work. There are many agents here, a lot of people in the Gulf who can organize visas for you. Some can give an agent 40,000 rupees. Sometimes it goes up to 100,000 and then they can be sent abroad.
WAKIL would never call himself a trafficker, and he clearly wants the best for his village. But to outsiders, he would be seen as a man who's willing to find work for underage children. The further the children are taken and the more often they change hands, the more difficult they are to trace, and the easier it is to exploit them. Close to the Nepali border is a shelter for boys rescued from forced labour. They'd all run away from home, and for some being sold was a relief. Many of their employers would treat them better than their own parents.
There, my father used to beat me up a lot. He used to drink every day and then beat me. That's why I left home. We had 3 brothers. I was the eldest in the family. I used to stay at the local train station. There, they used to beat me up every day.
My name is Rakesh Kumar.
Rakesh is 10 years old. He has a big smile, but his eyes are full of sadness. Like many of the other children on the march, Rakesh was rescued in a raid conducted by Bachpan Bacho Andalan and the police.
I used to graze cattle in my village. Then an agent came along and gave me sweets. He promised me more and took me to the next town. Then he tricked me and took me to northern India, Punjab, and I was given to another agent. He took 35,000 rupees for me. From there, the second agent took me further into Punjab and sold me to someone else. That family had 10 buffaloes. I had to feed the buffaloes, collect cow dung, clean their houses, everything. I had to break stones and bricks for construction. I never got any money in return. The agent got the money.
While trafficked boys are usually put to work as manual labourers and girls as domestic help, there's an altogether more sinister element to trafficking. In this brothel in the Indian capital, men queue up to wait their turn. Some of the girls have chosen to be here, but there are many Bangladeshi girls who have been forced into prostitution by traffickers, into a life of degradation and exploitation. This shelter in Dhaka, the capital of Bangladesh, is home to girls who are victims of sex trafficking. When HOSNAIRA was 13, her mother sold her into what she thought was a job in a steel company. But the traffickers had plans to sell her onto a brothel in Kolkata.
My mother is a bad woman. She listens to other people and sold me after listening to other people. We were poor. My mother told me she'd arrange a job for me as a domestic helper. But they said, if you don't do sex work, you'll never be able to return home again to see your brother and sister.
This girl is so ashamed of her past, she doesn't want to be seen. She thought she was going for a job as a waitress in Singapore, but she was locked in this shipping container and forced to service migrant workers.
I did think about running away, but I was scared. The man said he would kill me if I tried.
The traffickers told her she could earn her freedom by having sex with 240 men. She managed to escape after sleeping with half that number. The children on the march have made friends easily. The evenings are a time for fun, a chance for the children to be at ease and to be young. In the safety and care of their surrogate guardians, they display a newfound confidence. After 4 weeks on the road and having covered a distance of more than 5,000 kilometres, the march comes to an end in the capital, Delhi. The marchers will present a petition demanding a change in the law. Leading the procession are Rakesh and Devli.
We went around Nepal and India. We mingled with kids from other countries, and that gave us an opportunity to learn a lot. Now we have reason to go ahead and study and become something in life.
I learned that they smuggle kids from one country to another. They chop hands and legs. They make them beg. The government should think about it, and there should be a law against it to protect children.
Kailash, the man behind the march, will keep dreaming of a day when Indian children have the same rights as children around the world.
These children will be with us in our rehabilitation centers. They have their dreams and aspirations. They wanted to fly and touch the sky, and we will make all possible efforts that they can touch the sky one day.
That was Children for Sale. Well, following that film, Kailash Satyarthi's work on behalf of India's exploited children was recognised by the award in 2014 of the Nobel Peace Prize. And I'm so pleased to say that we've got him with us from New Delhi. Mr. Satyarthi, thank you so much for your time today. Good to see you. We saw the extraordinary work that you were doing a decade ago. What has changed since then? Have things improved at all?
Definitely. There is significant improvement in consciousness of masses and behavior, policies and practices. India has ratified two most important ILO conventions, one on the worst forms of child labor and another one on the age of employment of children.
I'd like to talk about you for a moment. The simple fact is you won a Nobel Peace Prize, and I want to know, just on a personal level, first of all, how did that feel? Did that feel like just, wow, people are really taking notice of what I'm doing?
Well, it was also a surprise for me and the surprise for the whole country. It came as a surprising news to everyone. The Nobel Peace Prize has never been given to this cause or any person who is working on this cause. So that is significant, and it has brought tremendous amount of awareness in the society, not only in India but globally. And I used that opportunity to push my agenda with the Sustainable Development Goals. And I knew that there was no mention of child labor, slavery, trafficking, forced labor in the Millennium Development Goals. And we were raising this issue that you cannot achieve many of these goals without eradication of child labor and slavery-like practices. So in the Sustainable Development Goals, we raised this issue. I raised this issue personally with a number of presidents and prime ministers and UN agencies heads, including the Secretary General of United Nations, and they could not say no to it, maybe because of this Nobel tag. And they were convinced that, yes, we have to introduce it. Now we have very clear agenda of eradication of child labor in all its form by 2025. Violence against children, child marriages, child trafficking, and exploitation of children in any form has to end.
So then what next for you and for your campaign?
Globally, we knew that there has been an irony that larger number of children are being involved in pornographic material production that has grown as $8 billion industry. There was last year's report. And the online child sexual abuse and all other forms of abuses, child trafficking, use of children for substance abuses, and radicalization of children is growing. What I am trying now and working very intensely with the number of governments globally, including with the Queen Mother of Qatar, Madam Sheikha Moza. I had a longer conversation with her, and she has supported my idea, in addition to Pope Francis or Angela Merkel and many more prime ministers and presidents, to introduce such a legally binding UN convention to stop the online child trafficking and child sexual abuse.
Kailash Satyarthi, it has been a pleasure talking to you, and good luck for what comes in the future.
My pleasure, and thank you.
Well, that is it for this week. Do check us out online, though, at aljazeera.com. The Rewind page has more films from this series there. I'm Kamal Santamaria from the whole team. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.